Welcome to Messy Liberation, the podcast that dives deep into feminism, business, and personal growth. I'm Becky Mollenkamp.
And I'm Taina Brown. Get ready for another messy conversation through the eyes of two intersectional feminist coaches.
Let's get messy. Your hair looks lovely. You're at the right place with the hair.
It's in that stage of, it's been a while since I got the blowout and like right before it gets greasy.
Yeah. It's just the right amount of dirty.
Yeah.
I understand that as well. Like, I reached the point where I'm like, okay, we've now crossed over from the right amount of dirty to...
We reached a tipping point.
Now I just look dirty and it's not good anymore. Anyway, hi everyone.
Hello.
As you may be able to tell from the fact that we're talking about our hair, we don't have a plan for today.
Do we ever have like...
Sometimes
we have an outline.
Or something that we, like at least a topic.
Yeah.
Today we're flying blind. We could talk a little bit about mental health days.
We could, actually. That's a good topic, especially considering everything that's happening in the world and just like what we were texting yesterday.
Well, the world is always worlding. And I feel like, I don't know, some part of me wonders, is it nostalgia that makes us think there were precedented times, or it was less whatever, or privilege, or a combination of those, or illusion? Because, I mean, honestly, as long as I've been alive, you know, we had the Cold War in my lifetime. We had 9/11 in my lifetime. We've had, and a war in Iraq. I don't know that there's ever a time when the world isn't crazy making if you feel it being that way, right? Like on the global scale, on the macro.
Oh, yeah.
On the micro scale, I think it's more about how do we respond to it. And I wonder if part of the reason it feels more heavy is because the older you get, the more responsibilities you have. And so what didn't feel so overwhelming when I was little because other people were worrying about everything.
Yeah.
As I get older and the more I have like a house and, and a mortgage and I have a kid or I have clients and like all the things that get added onto your plate with each new addition to the plate, the world feels harder. And I don't think it's any harder. I think it's always been shitty and hard on the macro level.
Yeah.
But I think individually it feels harder because we have more things we're trying to balance at the same time.
Yeah. I think it's a combination of all of that. Like, I think because, we can't deny the effects of globalization, right?
And climate change.
And climate change, all of those things. And so as those things become more prevalent, I think that tightens the pressure. But also, I think it's true that, when you're younger, you feel less responsibilities. You feel for a lot of people, not for everybody, but for a lot of people, you feel the impact of worldwide events or even national events. The impact of that grows as you get older because of responsibilities, because you're thinking about things. And part of that is just like neuroscience, right? Like we know our brains aren't fully, like our frontal lobes aren't fully developed until like our mid-20s. And the frontal lobe part of your brain is the part of your brain that helps you understand long-term consequences. So this is why young people make rash decisions. Yeah.
Do really stupid things.
Because you literally cannot see the long-term consequences. So if you have a young person in your life, give them some grace because of that, because their brain literally cannot function in that way. But then once that frontal lobe is fully developed, then you start to see like the dominoes being laid out. And then you're just like, oh shit, like this stuff like matters, like it means something.
Yeah. Well, and when you're little, your world is small. And the older you get, the bigger your world gets. And then also the more people that you feel love, affection, responsibility for, the more compounded the pain feels. So what feels maybe a certain way at 12 feels very different at 22 when you're now in love, or at 32 maybe when you have kids, or maybe at 52 when you now also have grandkids or whatever. That, like it just continues to, I think, compound the acute pain of things that you see in the world. And then, of course, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because it's you're not just thinking about yourself anymore. You're thinking about how things are affecting the people that you care about, whether it's immediate family or friends or colleagues, and so it becomes more pressing.
Not to mention, obviously, we live in like you said, with globalization and the world that we live in now with the internet, that certainly changed things because our worlds do feel both smaller and bigger at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, what we were talking about was mental health days or mental health, caring for our mental health because of all of that. So like the reality is, for whatever reason people are feeling acute pain at the moment, like emotional stress and all of that, it's real when you're feeling it, right? It doesn't matter why you might be feeling it, you're feeling it. And even kids are feeling it. We all feel it. And we don't live in a world that honors that, tends to that, cares for that. Like,
yeah, it's fucking business as usual.
yeah. And, you hear from people all the time, like, wait a minute, we're now in a new war. And, the laundry list of things, we can't cite them because by the time this comes out, it'll be different. And then the next hour, it's different. Everything's changing so rapidly with like global issues. But there's always something. And then you like, okay, so I'm just supposed to go to work and pretend like everything's just the same. Like, how do I just get up in the morning and brush my teeth while this stuff, and it's easy to let that stuff really start to weigh on you. And so we were talking about this because yesterday, first of all, you had reached out and said, like, can we sort of modify our expectations of each other with our business because you're feeling it? And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a relief because I have other things that I have going on as well. And my husband had just the day before taken a mental health day because he hasn't been sleeping great. And so he needed time off. And then that day I was home with my kid because I had given him a mental health day where I was like, you know what? He was a little snotty, but really he just wanted some time off. And he's not somebody who plays hooky all the time or anything.
Yeah. You get a mental health day and you get a mental health day.
Feels like over, right? I don't have a mental health day. I need to do that for myself next. But I've also lately been thinking about how I'm really due for my quarterly hotel retreat, which is really my mental health time. And that's coming up because I always do one around Mother Day. So anyway, it's just sort of like looming large. I think a lot of us are feeling that. And so I think we have to, not everyone, there's such a privilege in that. Not everyone.
There is for
that
sure.
time. But if you can, like, we need to not feel bad about that. I hate the idea that you have to. Well, I remember when my kid's doctor, we took him to the doctor recently for something, and he was like, does he need a note because he was going to be a little late to school? I'm like, no, his school doesn't ask for notes for being out. They trust us. But it made me remember that, like, there are so many people, if their kid's going to be out of school or if they're going to be off work, they have to, like, quote unquote, prove
that they needed that time off.
Yeah. And that certainly doesn't align very well with, I know myself and I needed today to rest.
Yeah.
Right?
There's no trust in that, right?
Yeah.
There's no agency.
Yeah.
What it communicates is that the individual doesn't have the option to choose for themselves, like what they actually need day to day, moment to moment. I remember when I was in elementary school and even middle school and maybe high school, still you needed a doctor's note if you were going to be absent from school. Like you couldn't just, like your parents just couldn't say, she was sick or she needed a day off or we had something happen. You had to have like an official doctor's note, an official doctor's letterhead with an official doctor's signature. So you wouldn't you wouldn't have an unexcused absence. Because, most schools, like they only allow a certain number of unexcused absences before it becomes truancy.
Yeah.
And then they have to like report it.
Right. And the state, their funding depends on that too. So it's not necessarily them being jerks, it's that their funding depends on that. Although I wonder how much leniency they actually might have on how they define an excused absence. For us, an excused absence is the parent saying that my child is excused today. Now they're in elementary school. That may change when my kid gets to middle school. I don't know. But talk about an ultimate FU to say you as the parent don't know your child. You as the parent don't have that sort of say to decide whether your child needs to be home.
The state decides for you.
Well, the doctor we have to have this gatekeeper showing up to approve or not approve what you're saying about your child. Could there be abuses in the system? Sure. Right. And that is something that then you talk about if you have a child who's been out for months and months or something. That's a different situation than every once in a while your kid needs a day off. And I'm not going to take my kid to the doctor to say, can you prove my kid is mentally exhausted today?
Yeah.
He just needs a break. I know my kid. I know I have the kind of kid who doesn't ask for a lot of time off, who isn't always trying to fake like I did when I was a kid, trying to fake illness. He likes school. So if he's telling me he's just tired and just wants a day off, like, okay, it's not a problem, but I should be able to make those decisions, right? And the same thing with employers. What a fuck you to say you don't get to decide that.
Yeah. And even if you didn't know your kid, even if there was something amiss, right? Like you as a parent should still have, like that power should still rest on you. And the way to handle a situation like that is not by punishing a parent or a child, right? Like we live in such a, what's the word I'm looking for? Disciplinary culture, right? There's a specific word I'm thinking of that abolitionists use. That
exactly.
I can't think of it right now. But
I was thinking abolition, but that's what gets rid of whatever the penal.
Yeah.
No, but anyway,
Yeah. If you know anything about abolitionist work, you probably know what word if you're listening and watching, you probably know what word I'm trying
And
to think of in my
you're
brain.
yelling at us saying, "It's whatever."
We
Our
want to hear you. We
our
can't.
perimenopausal brains are saying, "Sorry, no
It's
access to that word at the moment."
Yeah, I haven't slept well in like weeks. So that's where my brain is at. But yeah, we live in such a culture that's punitive. That's what it is. And such a punitive culture here specifically in the U.S. and in a lot of like Western cultures, like Western colonized imperialist cultures. It's like that's a lot of times that's not the helpful way to handle something,
It's
right?
certainly not the humane way.
Right. It doesn't get rid of the root of the problem, right? It just exacerbates the problem. It creates more problems. And no one should feel like they're gonna be punished for needing space to fucking breathe.
Yeah, and also it doesn't address people who don't have healthcare, right?
Right.
Or for whom the cost, even the co-pays become an issue to go in and get
Yeah.
that
Like how do you
doctor's
get a
note,
doctor's note if you can't afford to go to the
especially
doctor?
if it's a mental health day, but also just even for a common cold where I know what my kid needs, I can help treat them, like whatever. Anyway, that stuff is ridiculous. It is
Yeah.
punitive and it is pointless. Other than it is, I feel like, continues the systems that we have, this country's
Hmm.
built on, of around ownership and around
Yeah.
the ideas of who has full personhood and who doesn't.
Yeah.
And certainly in America, continuing to today, children don't have full personhood. They are most certainly not granted full personhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of problems around that in many ways, but at minimum, parents should be given the full personhood choices for their children versus the state
Yeah.
deciding those things. But also, just going to the larger issue, I think we don't give ourselves permission because of capitalism and all of the reasons to say, I'm allowed to rest today if I
Hmm.
need to rest today. And I
Hmm.
don't have to have the excuse of I haven't had enough sleep. That's valid too. But I don't
Hmm.
even have to have that. I don't
Yeah.
have to have that
Yeah.
there's something sick or, some physical ailment. I can just say, I need rest today because I'm feeling overwhelmed. I need rest today because the state of the world is making me sad. I'm
Yeah.
angry, whatever the things are. Like we don't honor the emotions to begin with. And then we don't give ourselves the space when we say, I need a little time. And we
Hmm.
don't give that to ourselves. And then it all compounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we
Yeah,
would
it
break
does.
down.
It does. The visual I usually get when I think about things like this, it's like I have a plate and there's only so many things that fit on that plate. And the more things that I stack on, like if I'm going to stack things onto my plate, then that means I need to take some things off. But we don't do that, right? We just keep stacking and stacking and stacking and not taking things off. And then it gets overwhelming and you can't carry it anymore.
It makes me
And
think of like going to either a buffet or like an US Thanksgiving dinner or one of those kinds of things where
oh, you're making me hungry.
I haven't had lunch yet, so that could be
Me
part of
either.
but it makes me think of exactly that, where my greedy eyes think I can handle more than I can. And so I'm just putting all the food on. And then either I eat it all and I feel sick,
Yeah.
or it all gets, I don't like my food touching and stuff, or it starts all touch. And then that
And
causes
then
me
it
all
just
kinds.
it's messy and
Yeah, it's
gross.
messy and
Yeah.
challenging. Where like I could just get a little bit of the things I want now, and then I could come back once I've finished
Reassess.
those, right? Am I still hungry? Can I go back and get more? It just totally makes me think of that. And yeah, exactly. Like how many of us know that experience so well and we do it in so many ways. And I feel like
Yeah.
we're doing that with our workload and not even just workload, but just expectations on ourselves on how we should show up. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
should be able to hack it. I should be able to do this. I should be able to, and even if showing up doesn't even look like work, I know this experience too, where I don't even know what I'm going to work on that day. Or maybe there's
Hmm.
really no pressing deadline at all, but I still feel like I'm supposed
Supposed
to.
to be doing something.
I gotta open that laptop. I gotta check that
Yeah.
email. I gotta come up with something to do today to like prove
Yeah.
my worth
Yeah.
by whatever it is. Instead of just saying, maybe today I just need to rest. I'm
Hmm.
getting better at that. I will
Yeah.
honor that for myself, that I have been getting a lot better at scheduling more open space in my calendar,
Yeah.
taking more open space, maybe not so much during the book launch time, but in general, I have been getting
Yeah.
better. But I still feel that pressure all the time to like perform
Yeah.
and also to make people think I'm performing.
Yeah. That you're being productive. Yeah. That it's not just like the inner perception of yourself, but also like how other people perceive you. Like, are you actually like being a productive member of society?
And
Like,
am
are you
I
contributing?
okay? Am I
Yeah.
strong enough that I can handle all this,
Yeah.
right? Not
Yeah.
necessarily letting people see that I'm overwhelmed or I'm tired
Mhm.
or, whatever. This is heavy on me.
Yeah.
And we do such a disservice to each other when we do that performance
Yeah.
thing, because the greatest gift is when someone else can say, "Can we, like," as you did yesterday, "Can we, like,
Can we, like,
reassess?
chill?
Yeah, can we just reassess a little bit? And maybe we just push pause for a certain amount of time, or
Yeah.
we don't have this expectation on each other. We reduce how much we're
Yeah.
talking, or whatever the thing is."
Yeah.
But when you don't say it, then the other person is left also performing.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
such a gift to give that person that opportunity. And even if it's not that, just give the person the opportunity to say, "Oh my God, you're feeling it too? I thought it was just me." I mean, the
Yeah.
amount of
Yeah.
times people say that, like, and
Yeah.
the weight that you feel come off your shoulders when you get to say that
Yeah.
is amazing.
Yeah. Can I tell you, it took me 20 minutes to send that text message, which is an improvement because I think years ago it would have taken me hours, right? And even years before that, it might have taken me days to like ask for the space that I needed. And even though I knew I was like 99% sure what your response was going to be, right? Because we've been like working together for so long now. Like I knew you were going to be okay with it. But there was still like that part of me that was like, no, I should just like buck up, right? Like I should just get it done. I
Push
just need to
through.
like hustle. I just need to push through. I need to stop, being a baby, whatever the case. So I like I'm proud of myself for sending it, but it still wasn't easy. All that to say, like it's still not
Yeah.
easy to like ask for those things. And
And it was
it
long. I remember seeing it, I was like, "Oh my God, what's this gonna be?" And you know what's so funny, Taina? This is like how ridiculous we are. I'm on the other side and I see this long text come from you. And I, without looking at it yet, I just see, oh, there's this long message. So
I
I
was
know.
trying not to make it long because I knew it was gonna like make
Well,
you
and
anxious.
my anxiety peaks and I'm like, she's telling me she hates me. I haven't performed. I'm not doing something right. I've dropped some ball and she's upset with me. Whatever. Like, I made it about me immediately. My anxiety was like, this person no longer likes you. It's immediately where
You're such an awful person.
well, it's immediately where my head goes. I'm like, oh, I've been discovered. And she's like, now she doesn't want anything to do with me. And so like, I then procrastinate reading it because I'm like, I don't want to see because it's
Really?
going to confirm
Yeah.
my worst fears. And then I get to it and I immediately am just laughing. Like, first of all, Becky, you're an idiot. Like, why did your head do this to you? And make sure you take your Lexapro because
Have you taken your meds today?
and then I'm laughing like, you could have just said, yo, chill. And I would have been like, cool. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this long message where I'm like, I could feel like it felt like the weight of it on you of like, I could feel your weight of like, I don't want to disappoint this
Yeah.
person. I don't want her to think it, like I could just feel there was all this in it because it felt not like a normal text between us,
Yeah.
just real quick,
Yeah.
whatever. And so I'm immediately like, oh my God, fucking who cares? Like, yeah, we're great. Like, it's cool. But it's just so funny how we are all in our own heads about things. And then so many of us are thinking similar things and we're not sharing that stuff. Because
Yeah.
immediately I was like, cool. Like, yeah, I've got this book launch going on. I'm trying to juggle 60 balls right now and I'm doing it, but I'm never unhappy to set one down for a while. Like, sounds great. I got my kid over here and, he's milking this day for all it's worth. And I'm feeding him, might as well be feeding him grapes while I fan him. So, like, I'm like, yeah, that's great. And it's just so funny how we have such stories in our head
Yeah.
about things,
Yeah.
about how it's going to be received, and me thinking something completely different, that it's all
Yeah.
about, me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. How much I need
it's
to
so funny.
justify, like how much I felt like I needed to justify, right, the request or the ask.
Which is
It
that
makes
says something though, doesn't it, Tiny? Because I
Yeah.
think, I would hope anyway, that of all the people in our world, like the people closest to us, and I hope I'm one of those people because I work with you all the time. Like, we hope that those people are the people who would be the least likely that
Yeah.
we have the least amount of explaining to do, and we're going to be the quickest to say, of course. And yet, if with those people we still feel, because I feel it with my husband too sometimes,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah. 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 Same.
and if we feel it with them, then of course we feel it with, the doctor or the school's principal or the whoever, right? It
Yeah.
makes it way harder in those spaces. So that's where we keep just masking up all the time. But I
Yeah.
just think,
Yeah.
what might change if we didn't?
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me think of just kind of going back to the conversation about like productivity and value and how much we assign self-worth to what we can produce, right? To the work that we do. And it just I mean, I can't think about that without thinking about accounting ledgers that enslavers had, right? In the colonial era of the US, and how a black person's, an enslaved person's value was determined by how much they could produce, how much work they could do on a day-to-day basis. And that is the system that created American capitalism. That is the system that created the American workforce, right? Back then, nobody was getting paid for it because they were enslaved, but that's still the foundation of like the value of work today that we live in. That has not changed. And so this constant pressure, whether it's external or internal or both, about, well, I need to have a valid reason to not be able to work, and I need to be able to prove it. And I need someone else to validate that on my behalf, or I just need to hustle and grind and get through it, regardless of what my body is telling me, regardless of how exhausted I might be, regardless of anything else that's on my plate. Like, that all goes back to the plantation. And without having that context and that understanding, I think we don't really have a full picture of what it would mean to divorce ourselves from that kind of thinking, right? Because then when you understand that that's where it comes from, then the impetus to absolve yourself of that pressure feels, what's the word I'm looking for? More urgent. Like, it feels, and not urgent in a bad way, but like in a ethically and morally, I cannot align myself with this kind of value system anymore.
Important.
Important, yeah,
I get what you mean by the urgent.
yeah,
It's not the
yeah,
icky urgency. It's like the
yeah. It's not fake urgency. It's just this, like, and obviously we have to work. Like, we can't just like,
we exist inside capitalism. We hate
yeah, like
it, but we do.
we have to work. We need money. Like, we need to be productive occasionally, at the very least, right? But then that changes. That knowledge can change how we decide individually to function within capitalism, how we decide to engage with it. And it allows us to be able to take some of that power back and be like, no, I am going to take this mental health day, or no, I am going to uh, sleep in or clock out at 5 and not take my work home with me, right? And you said you and I both own our own businesses. We do this podcast for fun. Like, we're not getting paid for this, right?
No, lest anyone think we are. No.
We have the privilege of being able to do this, right? To do this kind of work because of, whatever reasons, right? Whatever our circumstances are. And taking mental health days and going to see a doctor and things like that, those are also privileges for a lot of people. And like, I understand that not everyone has the ability to do that. But I still think, like, in small ways, that you can take your power back. Maybe you can't take a mental health day, but maybe you can have better mental health moments, right? Maybe there are other ways to, like, see to yourself and care for yourself, and like slowly inch back from the tentacles of like this toxic capitalism that we're forced to have to engage in every day. And it might not make a big difference in the beginning, but that adds up. Like, the more you start to like slowly take little things off your plate, like, eventually it will start to feel lighter. It's not going to feel light all at once.
No. And well, it makes me think of just what you said too. Like, we do this for fun. And still, I think both of us, and certainly me, maybe more even than you, can get caught up in this belief that, like, we have to get it out. We have to take care of this. We've got to do that. Like,
Yeah.
we got to have it grow.
Yeah.
We got to do
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. And it's like, none of that's real, right? We get to determine the rules here. We get to decide when it
Yeah.
comes out and what work we do. And like, you took a ton of time off from social media, and there was a while I wasn't putting out shorts, and we can do that. And we have to remember that, because it's really easy to also start to believe the story your brain is telling you about things being real or urgent or necessary or whatever. And some things are, but there are also a lot of things often that aren't, but we are believing that they are.
Yeah.
And sometimes also we aren't asking for help, right? So we think we don't have any solutions, but that's because we are still caught up in this idea that it's all individual.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
we haven't built any community or collective action that would afford us some opportunity where maybe we don't have the financial privilege or other privilege to care for ourselves. But if we were accustomed to asking for help, if we had some support structures in place, if we learned to live in a way that was more communal, collective, then we could. I wanted to also say a couple things about the enslaved part that you were talking about with the ledgers and all
The
that, because
ledgers,
first of all, the whole clocking in and clocking out grosses me out and always did
Yep.
when I had to do it, because it felt so much the same of like, okay, I'm having to prove down to the second that you've gotten your money's worth out of my body, out of me as like this tool that you use in your
Yeah.
business. And it's certainly not the same as being enslaved. And I understand that,
Yeah.
but it is, the vestiges of that
It's a
are
thread of that. Yeah.
exactly that same stuff. I mean, you went from that to like indentured servitude, where it's like, we don't technically own you, but if you want to get this thing that I promised you, you got to work for it, right?
Yeah.
And then like, the evolution of what work has looked like has led us to here, and it all goes back to that for sure. And there are still so many little things that we look at that
Yeah.
you can easily trace back and say, why
Yeah.
are we doing this? And it's because I have to prove my value to you. I have to prove that you're getting your money's worth out of me because you see
Mm-hmm.
me as property ultimately,
Yeah.
right? And if I don't, then now you can just disregard me, throw me in the trash, right? But it also and I think that's important for folks who have white privilege and who don't have that legacy on the side of being enslaved, and maybe they don't even have enslavers in their history, but certainly have benefited from that side of history.
Mm-hmm.
Important for us to recognize that inside of our relationships, whether that's as an employer, a worker, a peer, a friend, with our friends who do have that lineage, that direct lineage.
Mm-hmm.
And that, because don't forget, it still lives in the bones. Like this stuff
Yeah.
lives in our bones. And so it's
Yeah.
important. And I appreciate you calling that out for me to also remember that those feelings that could come up in our friendship. But also, it makes me think too, the only way that I tap into some of the understanding there. So again, this is not about drawing parallels or comparing, but where I tap into some of what that is like, is
Mm-hmm.
I do think about women specifically, because
Mm-hmm.
that's obviously an identity I hold, and particularly women who are mothers.
Mm-hmm.
I think this goes beyond just mothers, because I think this is still an experience, a universal woman experience, and it lives in my bones. The idea of caretaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that our care was demanded and in many ways stolen. Like there was also very little choice. Women didn't have choice to opt out of the caretaking system, right? Because if you wanted a place to live before you were able to earn your own money,
Yeah.
right? It was about this proximity to power, and the way you maintained that proximity and kept a roof over your head, kept food in your mouths and your kids' mouths, was that you were expected to care. You were expected to take care of all of the home, the
Yeah.
children,
Your husband.
your husband
Yeah.
and all of his needs, including sexual needs, but
Yeah.
also all the other needs. And those things still live in most women's bodies, I think, as well.
Mm-hmm.
Those expectations that is part of how we are supposed to show up and prove our worth. So when you add the work piece now, those things still remain, though. And I think so many
Yeah.
women, where I relate is like the places that I am holding on to some of that stuff, right? Of the expectation that I'm supposed to be the default parent. I'm
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be the one that's tending to my child's emotional needs, or I'm the one who's supposed to remember the birthday parties and buy the presents.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All of these things that add to the
Yeah.
invisible labor. And I think that that's something that we also need to hold space for and remember, in the same
Yeah.
way that, for you, I would imagine there is stuff in your bones that's like when there are expectations, or that weight of feeling
Mm-hmm.
expectations, that there's like this, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm assuming there's like this something baked in there around like, this is whether or not this person sees me as human, right? If
Yeah.
I fail to
Yeah.
deliver here. And I think I can feel some of that as well. Maybe not of
Yeah.
whether I am human, but whether I am worthy of love, whether I'm worthy of care, whether I'm safe
Yeah.
in am I not able to hack it as a mom or as a
Yeah.
caregiver for the people around me. So I totally relate in that way. I think that thread
Yeah.
for maybe white women who can't understand that, they could probably understand that piece.
Yeah. 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 It's all tied in together, right? And it all compounds, the
Absolutely.
deeper your identity goes. And I think, and not to say that those things are bad things, or that no one should intrinsically want to be a caregiver, right? Like if that's your desire,
Really
like,
about choice.
yeah, it's about choice, right? And it's also about the fact that, like, when you are partnered up with someone to do life with them, those are shared responsibilities. Like that, when I think about indigenous communities and the way that they shared responsibility for the care of everyone, right? Every living thing, including nature, right? Not just the things that could speak and reproduce, but including the trees and the rocks. Like everyone had a responsibility to care for everything, right? Or to care for things, right? That didn't look the same for everyone, right? Because maybe somebody was better at making quilts or whatever, right? And maybe someone else was better at hunting, right? But everyone had a role to care for the community in their own way.
And all of those roles were seen as important.
Yes, they were all valued. Like there wasn't one that was valued more than the other. Like they were all equally valued because they were all equally necessary. Like they understand that those are equally necessary things that need to happen for the community to thrive. And when you are a part of a home or family unit where, for lack of a better term, someone is not pulling their weight, right? Someone is not fulfilling their role. I remember just having this conversation with one of my uncles all the time when I was younger. Loved him. He's now gone, but loved him dearly. He was a lot of fun. He was also really raw as a person sometimes, thanks to trauma, the thing that we all experience. He he was misogynistic. Like there are a lot of people in my family, men and women, who have this misogynistic view of the world and especially the relationships between men and women. He firmly believed that a woman's role was to be at home and to take care of the kids and to cook and clean and do all of that. And I just remember telling him so many times, I would have no problem doing that if I felt secure enough in my partner to take care of everything else. Like if I knew for a fact that the finances were going to be covered, that, other thing, like that everything else was taken care of, I'm more than happy to sit at home and be a good little housewife, and just like do all of those things. One, because I like doing those things. Like those
That's
things
the most
feel like a
important
burden to
reason.
me. And that's one of the most important reasons, right? Absolutely. But I also, even at that young age, having these conversations as a teenager with my uncle, like I also understood that out of experience and just my limited understanding of the world at the time, that having that kind of an equal partnership was probably going to be unlikely with a male partner. Like I just knew. And then when I got older and I started to realize I'm not a heterosexual person. And I remember one of my roommates asking me, would you ever, because we were talking about like relationships and like I was trying to figure out like, am I bisexual? Am I pansexual? Like what's happening here? And so she was like, well, do you like men more than women? Do you like this more than that? So we were, going through all of that. Just an exploratory conversation, not to like make any definitions, but just to like be curious about what was happening. And she was like, well, would you want to marry someone who was a man or someone who wasn't a man? And I remember when she asked me that, I was like, even though I wouldn't mind being partnered up with a man, I probably would not marry a man. And she was like, why? And I was like, I just don't feel like they're reliable partners. Like I would much rather be that committed to someone who wasn't born masculine, because there's a culture in which people who are born masculine live in this sense of this bubble of like entitlement. Like the world caters to them more easily. The world bends to them more easily than it does to people who are not masculine. And that is what we call male privilege, right? Whether or not they want that, whether or not they accept it, whether or not they receive it and take advantage of it, that's a completely different story. What I'm talking about here is just the reality of how the world functions, where it will give in to a man's needs more than it will to anyone else. And because of that reason alone, I just have never felt like I would be in an equal partnership with a male partner. As much as I like the D, which confuses my wife so much because she's just like purely gay. And she's like, how can you? And I'm like, I know. They
I
give me
wish
the
I
ick
didn't.
sometimes too. I wish I didn't. And even a lot of my straight friends that are women are
Yeah,
like,
because,
if I could choose, I wouldn't, but I can't choose.
exactly. Well, and there we go, right? At the core of all of that, because yeah, for all the people who think it's a choice, believe me, most straight women, not all, but a lot of straight women would tell you, no, if it was a choice, I would not be with men.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, even the most enlightened, the most, aware and caring and all of those things, men, all of them who are really actively trying to do the work, they
And
can
there are a lot of them who are doing the work. I recognize that.
But they can never have the lived experience of being anything other than perceived as a man,
perceived as
right?
a man, yeah.
And so it doesn't matter how much they want to empathize, right? That your want of empathy is not the same as actually being able to. And it's not your fault. It's not a shortcoming. It's just that you can't. In the same way, no matter how much I want to empathize with you as a Black woman, I will never have the experience, actual lived experience of being perceived as Black. I can never know. I can read, I can listen, I can learn, I can care, and I can do all of those things, but I will never actually know what it's like to walk around in Black skin and have people receive me that way and treat me how you get treated everywhere. Right? So I could be the best possible partner I can be as a white person to you, but I would never be the same partner to you as a Black person is going to be. And the same for men. Like, a man can be the best possible partner he can be as a woman, but he will never be the same as a woman, and certainly not a woman who is not still caught up in her own internalized misogyny, which is
a different
story. Rather be with a And to be clear, I'd rather be with a very evolved man than a misogynistic woman, right? Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying, and it's not their fault necessarily. It's
not.
Some it is.
Yeah, some of it is. For some of them, it is their fault because they just don't give a shit. And I understand, that there are a lot of men out there who are trying, who are working, who are doing the things necessary to just kind of disentangle themselves from that toxic misogyny, that we're all bred to live in, right? Because it's not just men who act like that. It's also, like, before I met my wife, I was talking to a lesbian who embodied toxic masculinity, right? Well.
Absolutely.
Much more able to than I thought was possible.
And I know a lot of straight women who embody toxic masculinity. So misogyny is very real. We all breathe the airs, and I still have some of that stuff that I find.
Absolutely, me too. Me too. Like, I have to catch myself sometimes being like, why did I say that about her? Or why am I thinking this way? Like, that's not right. But I also, like, just recognize that for some women, that's okay for them. Like, they're okay with, like, having that extra, I don't want to call it a burden, but having that extra responsibility in a partnership to, like, be able to have those conversations with a male partner and do that work with a male partner. But for me, as an eldest daughter, as a mixed race eldest daughter in a family of misogynists, and just with everything that I had emotionally been through by my early to mid 20s, I was just like, I don't want that added responsibility. If I'm going to actually date someone and be partnered up, I want it to feel as light as possible.
I would just point out, though, that it's not not always is it that women are saying, I'm going to choose this added responsibility. They're taking on that responsibility because that's the only thing they have, their only option to be partnered. Right? So their choice isn't really between being with women or men and dealing with this responsibility. The choice is, I recognize I have to take on this responsibility, or I'm alone. And there are many women who say, I choose alone, and I honor that fully. But for straight women in particular, like, it's different for you and I, or for folks who are bi or pan or whatever, where maybe it is a choice. But for straight women, the choice isn't necessarily I choose to take on the responsibility or I don't. It's like I choose to, or I have to, or I'm alone. And again,
or I'm alone and I don't want to be alone.
And alone's a fine choice, but if it's not the choice you want to make, because you're right, it's exactly that. It's a responsibility. And it's a responsibility women shouldn't have to take on. In the same way, you shouldn't have to take on inside of our relationship the responsibility of having to educate me around things with your lived experience. And yet that is the world we live in, right? And what I hope is that I can at least honor that I know you're having to do that, and be, one, grateful, also apologetic, also doing the work I can to minimize how much you're having to do that. But that's just the reality, right? And so, like, and this exists, by the way, in any relationship you have with a man.
There's difference,
Exactly.
Any relationship where there's difference, this is the kind of thing, the
and if
messy
you fall in love
part
with
of
someone
it.
who's disabled and you're able-bodied, you could say, well, because guess what? They have to take on that responsibility of educating you about disability. They shouldn't have to, but they have to. Now, they could say, I could just choose not to love you, but sometimes we don't get to choose who we love. Because I love my husband, and if you're listening, there's still work to do, right?
There's always work to do.
Exactly. In the same way that I am honoring that with Taina, I will always have work to do, right? Around disability and around, race and all sorts of things. Like there's always work
Yeah.
I can do. My husband has work to do too, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I have to take on that responsibility of knowing there's going to be times where, and it's frustrating because, and this is what I think men and women often experience, and I think it's in all sorts of relationship.
Mhm.
It's when it goes unsaid because you don't feel like you should have to say it, and you'll hear people say, and I've been person do this too,
Yeah.
where I'm like, I shouldn't
I
have to
shouldn't have
tell
to tell
you
you.
exactly, but I have to remember
But
I
you
do
do.
exactly.
Yeah.
And choosing to be in this relationship means I am choosing that responsibility,
Mhm.
right? Which sucks. I
Yeah.
shouldn't have to, but it is a real
Yeah.
reality. So anyway, and one other
Yeah.
thing you said too, though, about with relationships and partnerships and the challenges, because you were like, if you're partnered up, there should be some equality in the marriage or in the relationship around parenting. And absolutely, I agree. And I just want to go back again to, because this is the thing that I'm like the most geeked out on and learning about and really leaning into more and more, which is the community aspect. So even
Mm.
if you're not partnered up, 100% of responsibility still shouldn't have to fall on you, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
because you're not partnered up or that person chose to leave or whatever, we should have communities that, again, like you
That
said,
can fill in. Yeah.
step in. And ideally that you don't even have to ask. But we are not accustomed, at least in this Western culture, of living that way. And
Yeah.
so we often have to, again, going back to that
Yeah.
responsibility, we end up having the responsibility of having to ask for the help we need rather than waiting for it to arrive. Some cultures, it arrives. You don't have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily our fate at the moment. So we do have to be willing to ask for the help that we need, because
Yeah.
just because you're alone doesn't mean that you should have to have 100% of the responsibility.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
whole "it takes a village" thing, which I know was, problematic in some of the ways as a white lady co-opting that language, but
Mhm.
all that to say, that is real.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is how we are meant to live. We were supposed to have wise elders that when they're no longer able to contribute in, like, the going to hunt or the making the clothes or
They
whatever way,
mentor and they
they
spend time and they raise.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we had
Yeah.
young people who are helping raise the kids that are a little younger than them and all of these things
Yeah.
that we've lost, but we have some agency to start to create it again for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what's really striking me about our conversation today, right? This going back to we do have choices. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way. And sometimes the choices are not great. They're not the best. They're not ideal, but there are choices that we can make day to day and how we work, how we love, how we, show up in community, whether you're partnered up or not. Like before I came out, I was like, I don't want the responsibility of being with a man. So I'm just going to be single. I am totally fine with that. I'm totally fine with being alone. And nobody understood it. I was queer before I was queer because people were like, well, what do you mean you don't want to get married? Because I was also like just so embroiled in like church culture that it was like, you're a woman in religion and you don't want to like marry and procreate and like further the kingdom of God. Like, what's
Well, the
wrong
older
with
that
you?
I get, the more I relate. If I'm ever single again, I'm done.
That's it. It's over.
I'm done.
It's
I have
over.
so many other wonderful relationships. I don't need to manage a
Yeah.
man,
And
and
you
I
can like be with people
yeah,
without having to be in a
yeah, you can have
relationship.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I even
Yeah.
want that, whatever.
Yeah.
But
If
anyway.
you even want that. Yeah.
But I
So,
love what
but
you said. I also am feeling that, and like I think that what this time right now, this snapshot in history, is teaching a lot of people, most especially people who have had more privilege that they haven't had to think this way, is thinking more collectively, right? Who are my people? Who are the people I can trust, that I can turn to, that I can support, that I can look to for support? In the business world, but also in my personal life and in
yeah.
my relationships and all of that. Like, I think people are starting to realize where there's gaps. They're starting to fill those gaps more. I think coming out of the online fever or dream of 2020 to 2023 and like, people are looking for more of that. And even still online communities too, but just trying to figure out what does it look like for me to find some support? Because
Yeah.
we all need it. And it's not a
Yeah.
failure to need that. It is how we are
No.
meant to show up.
Yeah. 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 Everything about this world lives in an ecosystem except for us. Like everything is like in relation to one another. And yet humans have decided at some point that we no longer want to live that way.
We live in ecosystems, but for most of us, they're ecosystems of like one or
Yeah. Yeah.
3, right? Like, yeah, we've made our ecosystems incredibly small.
Incredibly
They still
small.
are
Yeah.
there, but we have that choice to change that. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And yeah. And one way that I can ask for help, and I've already done it, but I'm just going to reaffirm it, is remind my husband that it's time for me to do my retreat. It's time for me to
Yeah.
have some alone time, because
Yeah.
I also need my mental health day or
Yeah.
day, so
Yeah.
that I can rejuvenate to be able to show up and be the way I want to be in support of others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm proud of you for that.
And I'm
I
proud of
think
you for texting me yesterday.
if you're listening and you're watching and you're like, how the fuck do I do this? Like, because a lot of what we talked about was just like ideas, but like, okay, how do you implement that? I cannot recommend enough the book, How We Show Up. Like, we're currently going through it in the coaches circle. And it's not the first time I've read it. Every time I read it, I'm just like, oh, this is so good. Like, there's so much practical, not advice, but like practical examples that Mia Birdsong, like each chapter is literally practical examples of the principles that she's covering. And so if you're just like, I don't know where to start, read that book, like get a copy of that book, go to your library, check it out, get an audiobook, whatever, get a copy of it, read it, and then have conversations about it with the people that you do have community with. Like you said earlier, like we sometimes assume that everyone is on the same page and we don't have to explicitly ask for what we need, but that's not the case. Like nobody can read our minds. So if you don't ask for it, there's no impetus, right, to like get it started.
Yeah, and her book's all about community. And then I will selfishly, because my book comes out this week, recommend my book as well, Liberate Your Business, for those who are entrepreneurs and thinking about some of these same things as far as running their business. So we'll put the links for my book and Mia's book in the show notes or description so that you can check those out. And thank you for being somebody who's willing to send me that text. And then also like knowing that on the other side of that, anytime I get a long text from you, I'm probably going, oh, this is it. She's
going to spiral.
Yeah. I have immediately gone into a shame spiral. That's just my go-tos.
Well, I'm glad we're together.
I am too. All right. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Messy Liberation.
Thank you so much for your support and for listening today.
Until next time.